In the shadowed forests of Wallachia, a ruler rose whose name became a whispered curse, a prince whose chosen weapon was fear itself. In this documentary, we will uncover the life of Vlad the Impaler, the medieval warlord whose brutal reign shaped legends of Dracula. We will explore the origins of his cruelty, the world that forged him, the terror he unleashed, and the tragic, violent end that awaited him. To understand Vlad, we must understand Wallachia in the mid-15th century, a frontier principality gripped between the rising Ottoman Empire and the fractured kingdoms of Europe. It was an age of shifting loyalties, desperate alliances, and a constant struggle for survival. Violence was not an anomaly. It was the language of politics. In this crucible, Vlad was shaped into both a ruler and a weapon. Vlad was born the son of Vlad Dracula, a noble bound to the chivalric Order of the Dragon. During his youth, he and his brother were handed over as hostages to the Ottoman court. This was not uncommon, but for young Vlad, it was a crucible of humiliation and forced obedience. His captors demanded loyalty, and disobedience meant punishment. He witnessed the methods used to discipline prisoners, from beatings to displays of public torment meant to enforce submission. These early experiences cultivated a belief that fear was more effective than diplomacy. Years later, when he returned to claim the throne, he carried with him the lessons of captivity and an unyielding need to show that he would never again kneel. Wallachia, at the time Vlad sought to rule, was fractured by internal rivalries. Powerful boyar families manipulated succession, installing and deposing princes to serve their own interests. Upon his return, Vlad found the throne unstable and the nobility untrustworthy. Determined to secure absolute control, he implemented brutal purges. Several boyar families who had betrayed his father were executed without mercy. Some chronicles describe entire gatherings of nobles being seized, interrogated, and eliminated. This moment established the foundation of Vlad's reputation. His message was clear. Disloyalty would be met not with exile, but with annihilation. The act that would immortalize him, impalement, was not invented by Vlad. It was a known form of Ottoman punishment, but Vlad transformed it from a method into a signature. Victims were stripped, bound, and forced onto a sharpened wooden stake. The entry point varied, but the stake was often inserted through the lower body and allowed to exit near the shoulder or mouth. The victim was then raised, the body's weight dragging it downward slowly, prolonging death for hours or even days. Vlad used impalement not merely as execution, but as spectacle. Rows of impaled bodies lined roads leading to his strongholds, creating forests of the dead meant to terrify enemies and subjects alike. The psychological impact was devastating. Even seasoned warriors hesitated when confronted with such scenes. During the early years of his rule, the Ottomans demanded tribute, a yearly payment acknowledging their dominance. Vlad refused. Instead, he launched campaigns along the Danube River, targeting Ottoman settlements and outposts. One of the most infamous confrontations occurred during a nocturnal raid against the massive Ottoman camp of Sultan Mehmed, who marched with an army said to number in the tens of thousands. Vlad disguised his men, cut through enemy patrols, and infiltrated the sleeping camp. Chaos erupted as fire spread, soldiers panicked, and Vlad sought to strike directly at the Sultan's tent. Although he failed to kill Mehmed, he inflicted severe losses. When the Ottoman army advanced further, they discovered what chroniclers later called the Forest of Impaled Men, thousands of Ottoman prisoners mounted on stakes. The horror was so great that Mehmed himself reportedly recoiled and withdrew. While Vlad's brutality against external enemies is well known, his internal rule was equally severe. He sought absolute order and used terror to enforce it. He punished thieves, conspirators, and even minor offenders with lethal rigor. One legend tells of a chalice of gold placed beside a public fountain. Vlad promised death to anyone who attempted to steal it. The cup remained untouched throughout his reign. Another account describes how he invited poor and sick individuals to a feast, only to have the hall set ablaze, declaring that their deaths rid the land of poverty. Though some stories were exaggerated by enemies, the underlying truth remains. Vlad's governance depended on fear more than justice. Vlad's harsh measures alienated neighboring rulers. Hungarian King Matthias, once considered an ally, viewed Vlad's growing power with suspicion. When the Ottomans intensified their pressure, Vlad expected Western support. Instead, Matthias accused him of treachery and produced letters, likely forged, claiming Vlad sought alliance with the Ottomans. This accusation served political purposes. Matthias seized Vlad, imprisoned him, and removed a volatile force from the regional stage. Vlad spent many years as a captive in Hungary, a downfall he found bitterly reminiscent of his childhood. Yet even in captivity, his legend grew. Stories of his earlier atrocities spread through Europe, transforming him from a regional prince into a figure of continental terror. During Vlad's long imprisonment under the Hungarian crown, he endured a life stripped of authority, but not entirely of influence. He was confined, yet he remained a valuable political tool. Reports from this period claim that his temper and cruelty persisted even behind castle walls. Some accounts describe him impaling small creatures that wandered into his cell, a grim reminder that captivity had not softened him. However, European courts also began reshaping his image. To some, he became a symbol of resistance against the Ottoman expansion. Writers and envoys circulated tales, exaggerated, embellished, or entirely invented, that depicted him as both monster and necessary defender. These years forged the myth more than the man. After many years, political tides shifted. Central Europe faced renewed Ottoman advances, and Vlad's ruthless reputation again became useful. Hungary agreed to release him on the condition that he fight against the Ottomans. Vlad was permitted to raise an army composed of loyalists and Transylvanian supporters. When he returned to Wallachia, the land was exhausted, contested, and distrustful. A rival, supported by the Ottomans, occupied the throne. Vlad's comeback required a brutal campaign of retribution. For a brief period, he reclaimed the seat he had lost, ruling once more with the iron severity that had defined his earlier reign. But the stability he sought remained out of reach. Vlad's last period of rule coincided with a new wave of Ottoman military pressure. Determined to defend his principality, he began organizing a series of raids and punitive measures. But the political landscape had changed. Local boyars, once terrified into obedience, were now fragmented and uncertain. Some resented his return. Others feared Ottoman punishment for supporting him. In the winter months, Vlad advanced toward enemy-held territories, leading a smaller and less disciplined force than in his earlier campaigns. His strategy, still rooted in shock and terror, attempted to compensate for limited manpower. It was a bold attempt, but it placed him on a precarious path from which he would not return. The exact circumstances of Vlad's death remain debated, cloaked in conflicting stories. One account suggests he was ambushed by Ottomans while scouting ahead of his troops. Another claims he was betrayed by Wallachian nobles who feared his growing authority. Some chroniclers even record that he fell victim to mistaken identity, slain by his own men in the chaos of battle. What is certain is that he died violently in the final years of the 15th century. His head was severed and delivered to the Ottoman Sultan as proof of his demise. The Sultan had it displayed upon a stake in Constantinople, a symbolic reversal of the terror Vlad had inflicted throughout his life. Thus ended the reign of the Impaler. With Vlad's death, Wallachia plunged once more into instability, yet the stories surrounding him did not fade. German and Russian pamphleteers, eager for lurid material, spread sensationalized accounts of his deeds. Tales described mass impalements, boiling cauldrons, mutilations, and elaborate punishments, often without evidence. These writings, while biased and intended to shock, ensured that Vlad's memory would never truly die. In time, these dark folk tales would blend with Transylvanian myths of the undead, creating a cultural echo that later inspired 19th century writers. The historical Vlad became entwined with a fictional vampire, a transformation born not from accuracy, but from fear itself. Vlad's power did not come solely from brutality, but from the deliberate use of terror as a political instrument. He understood that fear spreads faster than armies. By turning executions into theatrical displays and targeting traitors with merciless precision, he shaped a perception of omnipotence. To his supporters, he became a grim protector. To his enemies, he became an unnatural force. This manipulation of emotion, dread, awe, and uncertainty ensured that his reputation outlived his physical reign. It was psychological warfare centuries before the term existed. Centuries passed before the Western world resurrected Vlad's legend in a new form, the archetype of the vampire lord. Although Bram Stoker drew only loosely from the historical prince, the name Dracula carried a legacy of dread, shaping modern interpretations of the undead. Yet the historical Vlad did not drink blood. His horrors were all too human, and that is what makes them so haunting. The line separating tyrant from myth blurred, but at the core remained a man who embraced fear as his most faithful ally. The story of Vlad the Impaler reveals how desperation, conflict, and trauma can sculpt a ruler into a symbol of terror. His life stands as a reminder that history's darkest figures are often forged by violent environments, and that the methods they choose echo far beyond their lifetimes. In the end, Vlad sought order through brutality, stability through fear, and immortality through legend. What remains is a portrait not of a monster nor a hero, but of a man consumed by the very forces he tried to command. As the centuries fade, the shadow of the Impaler lingers, a chilling testament to the depths humanity can reach when survival becomes war and fear becomes law.